Good morning, everybody. Hunter Nation founder and host of the Nightly Nuge with Ted Nugent, Keith Mark is our very special guest today, Friday, March 24th, 2023. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and we are streaming today's live show on our Facebook page as well as on our YouTube channel. So however you may be watching, welcome and thank you for joining us. A special thank you to some of our recent guests this month, including constitutional conservative candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice Dan Kelly, who was just on yesterday. I think actually for the third time he was on. 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany, rock and roll legend Ted Nugent, Spooner Health CEO Mike Schaefer, former Polk County Sheriff turned attorney Pete Johnson, and of course, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald for our weekly Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. You can watch a recording of those and all of our previous live shows on our website at DrydenWire.com, on our Facebook page, or on our YouTube channel. But again, today we are chatting with Hunter Nation founder and host of the Nightly Nuge, Keith Mark. Keith, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Ben. After hearing that lineup of guests you've recently had, I'm trying to figure out what you are doing chatting with me. That's quite a lineup.
Oh, man, I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, and so this is always my favorite part when we have a first-time guest on, and I don't really like to learn much about them before they come on because I kind of want to learn at the same time as all of our other viewers are learning about, a guest. Don't know much about you. I literally had to go and just Google your name about 10 minutes before the show and go, okay, okay, Hunter Nation, okay, got it. So I can't wait to learn about you. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on. We had like one conversation, and that's literally all I know about you. So before we get into Hunter Nation founder, the Nightly Nuge, and all of that, for people who may not know you, tell us about you.
You know what, Ben? Been hunting all my life. I own McMillan River Adventures, which is the best moose hunting outfit in the world. We have 28 of the top 40 Pope and Young moose we've killed up there. I guide moose hunts, grizzly bear hunts, stone sheep hunts, mountain caribou hunts. We have the moose archery and muzzleloading world's record. We have the mountain caribou muzzleloading world's record. So big time hunter, and best friends with the Motor City Man, who you've had on there. I do a nightly podcast with Ted called The Nightly Nuge, 6 days a week, which that is a handful in and of itself. People often ask me, Ben, they say, Keith, what is it like doing the Nightly Nuge with Ted Nugent? And I always say it's kind of like the guy that invented the Chatty Cathy doll. All he did was pull the string, and then Chatty Cathy goes for it, Yeah. I hosted McMillan River Adventures on the Outdoor Channel for 10 years, and 7 of those years, my co-host was WWE legend Shawn HBK Michaels. So, I've been having some fun, man. And then, in 2016, when Shawn and I were still hosting McMillan River Adventures, we happened to be at the SHOT Show in Vegas signing autographs at the Remington booth, and a guy came up to me and he said, hey, Keith, how would you like to meet Donald Trump? And, I really wasn't into politics at the time, Ben, and I said, are you talking about the guy from The Apprentice? Yeah, right. And they go, yeah, that guy, and there were still 17 Republicans in that primary. And so I went to a pretty small gathering. When I walked in, a guy said, oh my gosh, look who's here, Eric, it's Keith Mark. He said, Keith, I love your show. You kill the biggest moose in the world every year. And I said, yeah, hi, nice to meet you. I'm Keith Mark.
What?
And he said, I'm Trump Jr. And I felt like quite the idiot. Like I should have known I was talking to Donald Trump Jr. And honestly, we talked about hunting. I didn't realize those boys were such big hunters, become very good friends with Don Jr., hunted with him a bunch. And then in walked President Trump, then candidate Trump. And honestly, Ben, he said something to me in that conversation that changed my life. He said, hey, Keith, do you want to know why politicians don't come to hunting-related events like the SHOT Show? And I said, sure, I'd like to know. He said, because hunters don't vote. Now, listen, when I say that to you, Ben, your initial reaction has to be, that's not true.
It doesn't come on.
How can it be?
Right.
But we got the data shortly thereafter, and he was right. Depending on the state you look at, Ben, 40 to 50% of licensed hunters, they don't vote. And what's worse yet, a third of them, using a hunting vernacular, don't even have a tag to vote. And so really Hunter Nation was born right then, although we really didn't come into being until 2018. But from that moment on, it's been my goal, Ben, because when I sat around these campfires with Sean about 100 and 150 times a year back then, these hunters, they're up on all the current issues. These hunters weren't happy with the direction the country was going in. These hunters had the same core values that I had: God, family, country, pro-gun, Christian values. I knew they had to be voting. But when I found out they weren't, boy, it was heartbreaking to me. And so literally these last many years, it's been my mission, Ben, is to get hunters to vote. That's why we started Hunter Nation, which is hunternation.org. And then we have a sister organization called huntthevote.org, which is our C3 that is focused on informing, educating, and then getting hunters to get out and go vote those values. So that's really my background in a nutshell, with one short exception. I've been married 37 years, coming up on 38, have 3 wonderful kids, 3 great grandkids, and I'm a K-State grad who, by the way, just won last night.
Congratulations.
I have to throw that in too.
Yeah.
So that's me in a nutshell.
You in a nutshell. I wrote down I don't even know where to start unpacking everything you just said. Don Jr., Hunter Nation, Shawn Michaels. How did that, let's start with the Hunter Nation. So you're saying that you started Hunter Nation with the focus of encouraging or trying to get hunters to vote. Was that right?
100%.
And how does Hunter Nation do that?
We do it 2 ways, okay? So Hunter Nation Inc., which is our policy side, it's our C4. And I was just in Washington, D.C. In fact, I met with your representative, Tom Tiffany, who, along with Lauren Borbert, put there's a bill out there. I was at the committee hearing yesterday trying to get the wolves delisted in the continental. We
did a press release from Tiffany. We put it on our website yesterday.
Yep.
Your name wasn't mentioned, I don't think.
Well, if you look, it was read into the Hunter Nation was actually when Lauren announced the bill, Representative Borbert from Colorado. She read into the record the support from Hunter Nation. We actually wrote a letter to the committee, giving some facts and figures in our support of the bill. And we met with 3 senators up there. There is going to be some bipartisan support. It's going to be heavy lift. But if you think about what happened in Wisconsin just a few short years ago, Hunter Nation sued your Fish and Game Department to get that wolf hunt. And the one wolf hunt that you've had in the last many years, that was because of Hunter Nation. And so that's our policy side. And that's to earn the trust of hunters, to let hunters know who we are, to brand us as the unified voice for the American hunter, to let the Wisconsin hunters, the Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, wherever they are, let them know that we're there to fight for your rights in your state. There's a lot of great organizations out there, Ben, from ducks to elk to mule deer to sheep to everybody, and they're doing a great job when it comes to one particular species or one particular region. Hunter Nation is that one group that's out there fighting for the hunter, and that's what we do with our policy side. That's again why I was getting my alligator boots all dirty from the swamp up in DC. And then the sister company, the sister organization, huntthevote.org, that's where we actually message our members and those out there on the value of voting. So that's kind of how they work.
I'm going to look that up right now on my phone. Huntthevote.org. I haven't been to that one. So for people who don't know, so you were saying that you were just in DC, and I had just said that we put up a press release from Tom Tiffany yesterday. For people who don't know what that is, what is this about? Obviously wolves, but what was that? Well,
think about this. In 1975, the endangered, we're actually 73. This is the 50th anniversary of the Endangered Species Act. And they put the gray wolf on there along with the grizzly bear because their numbers in the continental 48 states had dipped. And so they set some recovery goals that they wanted to meet in the Great Lakes area. Take your great state of Wisconsin. If the wolf pack was within 150 miles of Minnesota, then you needed, or 100 miles from Minnesota, you had to have more than 150 wolves in your state. If it was outside of 100 miles, then just 100 wolves. You exceeded those goals in the early 2000s. And during this 12-year period of time, Ben, your deer harvest in Wisconsin has dropped by 40%. Think about that for a minute. 40% less hunters are putting the pure venison on their table. And you ask why? Well, the reason why, Ben, is because at the exact same time, the wolf population in Wisconsin increased, I should use the word exploded, by 240%.
Ooh.
And so you now have nearly 1,000 wolves, 10 times the quota limit in Wisconsin. And so what Representative Tiffany is trying to accomplish up there in Washington, D.C. is to allow the states to manage their wildlife, like the state manages your deer herd, your elk herd, your pheasants, all of the wildlife within the borders of Wisconsin are managed by your most of the time capable Fish and Game Department. I have to add that caveat because they actually slow played us when it came to getting the wolf season done. And that's why, I really wanted to come on your show today, is because how did we accomplish that wolf season? Well, because your Fish and Game, the bureaucrats, your unelected people in Wisconsin just made the decision they weren't going to do what the law told them to do. We had Hunter Nation filed a suit. It went into the courts. Who decided that? Judges. And that's why if these hunters that are sitting out there and they're upset that their deer harvest is down, they're upset that their gun rights are under attack, they're upset because a lot of their traditional values are under attack, their right to speak, worship, and actually even work during COVID lockdowns are all under attack. Well, my friend, that's on the ballot up there April 4. Because if you guys don't pick right, if you sit at home with apathy and don't go vote, listen, 30 years of conservative right building and value building in Wisconsin is going to be gone overnight, my friend.
Renee had just commented, I just voted for Wisconsin's wolf hunt, where Wisconsin can manage their own hunt or no hunt due to Mr. Tiffany. So I am not a hunter. I'm like the only person in Northwest Wisconsin who doesn't like the Packers or doesn't hunt. I don't know why. I just, it's fine. I'm glad other people do. So when it comes to the wolf population and the reasoning for having it, the deer population, so is that a part of it? So if you had to put in like 2 or 3 bullet points for people who, like myself, who I don't, there isn't a wolf outside my house. Now, granted, I live in town, but it's a small town. I don't really see wolves and I don't really see deer, but I know of all these things. How do you sell that to someone who isn't a hunter as to why this is very important? The wolf hunt and that legislation, all the stuff that's going on, why is that so important?
So if for those listeners that missed that 7th grade biology class of habitat and carrying capacity, let me put it to you this way. So let's imagine, Ben, that you and I are going to throw this monster bash after the show today.
Nice.
And we're going to have 1,000 of our friends. 980 of them will be yours because I might be able to bring 20 friends. But
I'll call all my friends. Yeah.
We're going to have a banquet hall with 1,000 people in there.
Love it.
And you throw out 4 Jimmy John sandwiches.
Okay, that's probably not. We're probably going to have some upset guests.
For sure you are. And so here's the deal. Wolves are apex predators. And so wolves, they do 2 things. We can only mention one on your family-related show, which is eat. And then in the next following year, they have little wolves. And those little wolves, you understand how they were built. I just jumped off.
Yeah.
And they like to eat as well. And then the little wolves grow up and they do those same 2 things. And this is what's happened in Wisconsin, where you've gone from 70 wolves to now 1,000. And they said they were going to grow at a rate of about 3%. That's not what's happened. They're growing at a much larger rate. And so when you meet the Endangered Species Act, and listing the wolf was a great success story because, we love our brother, the wolf. We love the elk. We love the moose. We love them all. And as hunters, we're true conservationists. We want a healthy population of them all. But what's happening now is there's so many wolves that they're now becoming a liability to your ranchers. They're a liability to your farmers. They're a risk to your pet owners, and they're devastating your deer herds. And so what happens is, as your eventually you're going to get to a critical recruitment level with your deer herd there, Ben, because once they reach a certain level, they're under such threat they don't produce little deer. And so if we could have a graph here, while the wolf population is growing exponentially, your deer herds are dropping. And that's reflected in your deer harvest. And this isn't my opinion. These are just hardcore facts. So what you have to understand is if you like to see deer, you like to see moose, you like to see your pet chihuahua playing in the yard, you have to manage the wolf just like you do everything else.
Well, again, not being a hunter, I'm also thinking Northwest Wisconsin, because summertime, Memorial Day to Labor Day, or is it the other way around? Labor Day, I can't remember which one's first. I always forget. I think it's Memorial Day to Labor Day. It's just all Minnesota, all Illinois, plates around here. People come up to hunt. I look at it maybe from an economic standpoint, because that drives so much revenue for us up here in rural Northwest Wisconsin, which is redundant because it's all rural up here. But that's a huge boon for our economy. Is that a part of the equation? If we don't have enough deer, are people really coming here? Are they going to go somewhere else? Or is it, well, that's not really gotten to that point yet, but maybe in the future, if it actually gets, quote unquote, worse, fewer and fewer deer, or is this not really a part of that?
No, it is. And how much worse does it have to get? When your deer harvest has gone from 519,000 to 300 and some thousand, 40% drop. I mean, how much worse does it have to get before people stop hunting? You realize 100% of the money that your Fish and Game spends for conservation, and this isn't just game animals, this is non-game animals as well, that's 100% funded with hunting dollars, the Pittman-Robertson Act. And so if people stop hunting, there won't be any mechanism for conservation. Look at Kenya. When Kenya, they had the regime change there, they banned elephant hunting because they were getting pressure from the do-gooders and the anti-hunters in the States trying to take Western values and implement them in third world countries. And the next thing you know, their elephant population exploded. Everyone was like, great, lots of elephants. And then there were virtually none. And then while this was happening, the dollars that hunting generated for Kenya, for schools, fresh water, all of that dried up. And that's exactly what will happen in the States. If Colorado, for example, I did a radio interview recently in Colorado. They're introducing 50 wolves on the western slope in Colorado. And their sound wildlife policy is we're never going to lethally manage wolves. We believe, honest to goodness, I just listened to a House of Representative member from Virginia explaining to the committee that wolves will self-regulate their population. And when they reach a number where there's just not enough elk and deer to eat, they'll stop doing that other thing they like doing as well.
Yeah.
Just automatically. And I'm like thinking, I didn't read that in any of the science books that I've read and any of the researches that I've read. And this radio host, who was quite liberal, he said, well, Keith, one thing or another is going to happen. You're either going to be able to say, I told you so, if you're right, or wolves will stop doing that other thing. And I said, as a parent of 3 and a grandparent of 3, I've told my kids and grandkids, don't touch the hot stove because it will burn you. And my whole goal as a parent was to make sure they didn't touch the stove, because there's no pleasure in an I told you so when something has gone so terribly wrong that it can't be fixed. And so that's what they're on the fast track to do in Colorado. And a lot of these other states and these federal people in Virginia and California and New York telling Ben and your fellow Wisconsinites how to manage your own wildlife, that should never be done. That's why I salute Representative Tiffany, because he's up there fighting like heck for you guys.
So is that the pushback? And I don't want to say Democrats because I don't know who are the ones that are pushing back on, no, we don't want that for states. So whomever it is, you had mentioned that they'll figure it out, right? Life has a way of just doing that. The wolves, they'll manage themselves. Is that the pushback? Is that the argument? Or is there something bigger than that or more than that?
Well, listen, there's always going to be an argument, because if you want to
Sure.
get to right to the brass tacks, it's money. Because nothing raises more money for a left-leaning candidate than the dog in the kennel, than the cute wolf puppy. These people play on emotions, and it's like the gun issue. Nobody wants to solve it because both sides are raising money on it. Our grandkids are going to hear the abortion argument because no one really wants to solve it, because they're both sides raising money on it. And the problem here is something that is so perfect, which is conservation. It shouldn't be political. It shouldn't be partisan. What should happen is people should look at the numbers. Wisconsin is supposed to have 100 wolves. We have 1,000 of them. We're supposed to have this many deer. We're having very much less of that. Let's fix this problem. How do you fix the problem? You have to manage the predator that's taking out
Yeah.
the deer
Well,
population.
it seems logical, and I don't know if that logic and politics go hand in hand very often. So, how does this play out? What's next? What's going to happen? Is there going to be? I don't know when like wolf hunts typically happen: spring, summer, fall. I don't know. Is this going to happen that you're aware of? Is this legislation that they're looking at that you were referencing with Tiffany when you're out in Washington D.C.? Is this going in the direction where everyone's kind of going, all right, like I feel like we're making headway here. I think this has a chance, or whatever. It's probably not.
I looked up the bill on the website that grades the chances, kind of like if you go to Barstool Sports,
What?
when
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't have it right off the top of my head,
Okay.
but the guy gave it to me. I looked it up. This particular bill has a 5% chance of passing.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah. So the problem is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service delisted the wolf. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, this was under Trump, and the Biden administration's U.S. Fish and Wildlife went and defended this in court, because everyone at the highest level, both parties realized that the wolf population is completely out of control, Ben, and it needed to be managed. So they took them off of the Endangered Species Act. That's how we were able to get the hunt in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And there was hunts scheduled in other states. And then what do the anti-hunters do? These groups, the Defenders of Wildlife and PETA and these other just terrorist organizations, in my opinion, they do what they do every time. They go to the courts. And where do they go? They go one of the coasts. So this one was in California. An activist federal judge in California, he does what he always does. He sides with the left and says no wolf hunting. We don't have enough data. Really? We don't have enough data? And I mean, they had enough data to choke him, but he doesn't care. They do what they want. Again, this is why I keep coming back to your Supreme Court election, Ben. It's so critical that hunters realize that these judges, they can be activists, and you have one on the ballot. You have an activist judge on the ballot. And if again, Hunter Nation isn't saying who to vote for what party, but if she wins, Keith Mark believes, that all of these rights will be gone. You will never have a wolf hunt in Wisconsin. Your gun rights will be in peril. Your boundaries are going to be redistricted to the point where even when we turn out in big numbers, it won't matter because they're going to weaponize the boundary making. Again, this all happens at the court level. And so really the end result is we must elect enough politicians and judges like Tom Tiffany, like Ryan Zinke in Montana, like Rosendahl in Montana, like Hagerman in Wyoming, like Mike Lee in Utah. These are the people that truly represent we the people, Ben. And it starts right in your own state. You guys did a great job up there with Ron Johnson, who's part of a separate bill. It's a little misguided. We need to visit with Ron. I think Tom's going to. Tom Tiffany. I mean, wolves need to be delisted in the continental 48 states, not one or two states like we accomplished in 2011. In 2011, Ben, we got a partial delisting of wolves in Idaho, in Montana, and Wyoming. And part of that bill, because we just put the U.S. Fish and Wildlife's own language in the bill, that says you can't have judicial review. Makes sense, right? Why
Right.
would you have an activist judge in DC or California decide the fate of the wolf in Wisconsin? So we have wolves delisted. They're hunted every year in Montana. They're hunted every year in Wyoming. They're hunted every year in Idaho. And they're starting to get their populations to a sustainable level. Why would Wisconsin not be able to do that? Why would Michigan and Minnesota and Utah not be able to do that? That's a travesty. And so, again, you got to vote the right people in, Ben. And if you don't, thanks for not voting. Because then when somebody's limiting your gun rights, somebody's not allowing you to hunt or worship or speak the way you want to, the enemy thanks you.
I've always been a proponent of, I think some things should be federally done. I totally get that. And I think there's sometimes like we're one country, but most of the times we're 50 states. And I've always liked the idea of keeping it local and here. And even in our own state, in Wisconsin, it's still different. I mean, Milwaukee, if you had the conversation about gun control, it may mean something different in Milwaukee than it does in, Spooner, Wisconsin. It's a different thing, but at least it's better than talking about the needs or views of someone in a California or New Jersey versus Eau Claire, Wisconsin. They're wildly different. So I kind of like the idea I always have of states having a little bit more, here's what we're going to do. And then everybody can, be upset about whatever decision they decide to make, but just, in the state. So Hunter Nation, how many states do you represent? Is it all 50?
Yes.
So, okay. So when you first started it, how long did it take for this to take off? Or was it, man, there was a hole, we filled it, and we were even surprised on how fast it took off?
Well, listen, it's taken off quite quickly. But we only started in 2018. You want
Right.
to talk about grassroots? I mean, Paul Revere just left this town, and he's on his way to another town today. And that's really what we're doing, Ben. This is truly a grassroots army, and that's what it's going to take the country back.
So talking about, I think you froze.
No,
Renee. There you're back. Okay, sorry. Shoot, now I lost my train of thought. Boy, you know what? I just had something. I thought you froze there.
You were talking about how we grew. You were talking about how Hunter Nation has grown.
Yeah, and it's grown obviously pretty fast. What does that look like? Is it? Well, obviously you were just in Washington D.C., so
Yes.
people clearly are starting to take Hunter Nation seriously, and maybe they have in the past. So is this moving the needle in, you had mentioned Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. You got some things kind of done, right, moving it along. And now you're coming on, well, here in Wisconsin, that's where, we're hosting this from, and we have a Supreme Court race. Is Dan Kelly, now again, not Hunter Nation, as you pointed out, you're not speaking for Hunter Nation in the that aspect, but is it Dan Kelly has come out and said, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that? And that's why you're endorsing or supporting Dan Kelly?
Yeah. So let's talk it in two ways, Ben. So what Hunter Nation does is that we inform our members and the hunters of the state that we're targeting at that time, which happens to be Wisconsin at this moment. We want to make sure they're informed with what's going on from a policy standpoint, from a position standpoint, because believe this or not, don't let me fool you, Ben. Most hunters are actually pretty smart. And you don't have to tell them who to vote for. You just need to tell them where the candidates stand. And they know who represents their values. They know who represents God, family, country, pro-gun, traditional values. The problem is, it's not that they don't know who to vote for, it's just getting them to go vote those values.
Vote, right.
And so Hunter Nation is kind of trying to make sure we push them to get out and do the voting, okay? That's what Hunter Nation does. Now, Keith Mark personally, here's how I decide how I'm going to vote. I rank my issues: God, family, country, guns. I'm very America first. I'm very pro-American worker. And so I list where these candidates stand. So Keith Mark personally, when I took a look at these candidates, Janet Prosewitz and Dan Kelly, and then I looked, where do they stand on the traditional values? God, family, country. And it's not even a close comparison up there. I mean, you have an activist, soft on crime Janet, again, this is Keith Mark. She's an activist. She'll use the pulpit as an activist. She's said she wants to redraw the boundaries up there. Why does she want to redraw the boundaries? She wants to put her thumb on the scale to make sure that liberals win in all the districts. And people just, if you don't grasp this, so a lot of people, they go to the polls to vote abortion. Well, if abortion's your issue, whichever side you fall on it, Janet, Soft on Crime Janet, is her largest contributors, Susan B. Anthony, the biggest proponents of abortion in Wisconsin and really all across the country have dumped money into her candidacy. The largest pro-life groups are behind Dan Kelly. I'm not going to tell you what your values are, Ben, or your listeners. You decide. To me, it's a simple deal. Look at the gun issue. Dan Kelly has always come out strong in defense of the Second Amendment. I think Dan Kelly's belief on gun control is like mine. Practice so you can control where your bullet hits when you pull the trigger. And
Ideally.
That's what the Second Amendment is. I should have the right, not infringed. Dan Kelly is a true conservationist. Janet, soft on crime, is not. And then we talked about, the other issues of the redistricting. But I saw recently on Twitter yesterday, I believe it was, there's these allegations that are out of a family member of soft on crime Janet that said that she had whacked, and I don't want to get into the family dynamics, but had whacked an older gentleman. And I said yesterday to one of my hunting friends in Wisconsin that if you hunters don't get out and go vote, you think that old man took a whack, she's going to whack your right so far you won't see him for another 30 years, Ben. And so that's Keith Mark personally. And so Hunter Nation is a grassroots organization. It's like Paul Revere. It's like our founding fathers, the original patriots, Ben. The way the word was spread was in taverns and churches and bowling alleys. Well, maybe they didn't have bowling alleys back then, but we do now. Their taverns are our bars. And, our friends and our family, we need to spread the word from person to person, man to woman, woman to man. Can I say that anymore, Ben?
I'm not 100% sure. This might get banned on Facebook. I'm not sure.
Is that allowed, he, she?
I don't know.
However you pass the word among people that you associate with, make sure that your friends know that all of these values are on the ballot. And the cool thing about Wisconsin, Ben, is April 4 is your vote date. You can early vote right now. You can go out and early vote. Oh, wait a minute. I don't even have a tag to hunt. No, I'm not registered to vote. Wisconsin, you can do it day of voting. So get out, register, and go vote.
So I went to Hunt the Vote, right? And in here, when I scroll down a little bit, it says 50% of hunters do not vote. So that's what you were looked at when you were talking about Don Jr. and it was Donald Trump in 2016 who said, here's why nobody shows up to these things, right? Because hunters don't vote. That's why politicians don't really get involved in this stuff because whatever. That's how it works. That's politics. But is that so on your website now or on Hunt the Vote is 50%? So if that was the kind of the number back in 2016, 2018, does that mean that we really haven't gotten that number down? I mean, is this becoming effective at all?
It is becoming effective, and we'll be updating that after we get our data back from the 2022 midterms. But what I can tell you in Wisconsin, more hunters voted in Wisconsin in 2020 and again in 2022. I think you had a very close Senate race up there. I do believe that the American hunter, the Wisconsin hunters were the difference makers in that election. So we are now turning out hunters. Let me just say it bluntly, Ben. Resources matter. And so when we're buying Facebook ads or we're targeting people with live events with a Ted Nugent or a Craig Morgan or a Michael Waddell or whoever it might be, this stuff just doesn't come together. So we need the capacity to do that. And I always say this when I get the opportunity to speak to a large audience like you're providing me with today. If you're somebody up in Wisconsin or somewhere else listening to this DrydenWire today, which I know you have a large audience, if God has blessed you to the point where you have some extra resources and you love what we're talking about here, God, family, country, and our traditional values like hunting and gun ownership, go to hunternation.org and join us. Become a member. become a life member. If you have a little extra coin, be a donor, because that's how we do it. And we're actually heavily now involved in this Wisconsin situation leading into April 4. We are going to unleash our troops up there. I think you have interviewed Ted Nugent. I'm sure Ted told you a little bit about Hunter Nation and huntthevote.org. I mean, he's our national spokesperson. Ted's been my best friend for 25 years. Him and I really came up with this idea of how we were going to do this to get hunters to go out and vote. We're both committed to this. Hunter Nation is going to reach as many hunters as we can in Wisconsin, just like we did in 2022 for your Senate race. And God willing, our message is going to resonate. It's going to hit the ears of people, even like you, Ben, that may not be hunters, but do love the traditional conservative values that we stand for. And you will get to the polls. Your friends will get to the polls. We'll take our wives, take our friends, take our husbands, and go vote our values. That's all. If we do that, Ben, you're going to have me back on the show April 5th, and you're going to say, damn. And I'm going to say, yeah, hold my beer, buddy. Because this is what it's going to take.
Yeah.
This is really what it's going to take. And that's why we are a grassroots organization, because I believe America is the greatest country. And the way we're going to save it, Ben, is through grassroots.
If somebody went to hunternation.org and want to be a member, so like myself, don't hunt, but I totally get the need for all of this stuff. And what does that mean? So if you're a hunter, I totally get it. What if you're not a hunter? Or maybe it doesn't really matter. You're a member. What is it required? Is a membership here's $10 a yearly thing, or whatever it is?
Yeah, there's an annual membership. There's a family membership.
And then what happens? So you're a member, you just get like some newsletters. What does it entail?
Yeah. Well, you'll get some newsletters, because our whole deal is we want to inform our people on the policy stuff. And look, we are a hunting organization. We have a newsletter getting ready to come out here the 1st of next month. And there's some awesome turkey tips in there from Cuz Strickland. Nugent wrote an article. Jana Waller wrote a great article about hunting turkeys out west. My son wrote a cool tips and tech kind of article. I'm going to pin something. Again, might not be that insightful, but it'll be entertaining. Listen, and so you get all that hunting stuff too. We have raffles. You can potentially win a hunt with somebody cool like Donald Trump Jr. or Ted Nugent.
What?
There's all kinds of cool things we have going. And you get some swag too. If you get the life membership, the cooler, listen, has a cool Hunter Nation logo on it. So yeah, you get some swag, but most importantly, you become part of a community that thinks and acts and talks and believes like you. And it's just like anything else, Ben. If you and I were in a bar this evening and we get in a fight and there's 30 people on the other side of us, you and I get our asses kicked.
Likely.
If we have 60 people with us, we win. The Concord Bridge, if only one guy would have shown up, the American Revolution never occurs. And that's just the truth. But what happened is one guy got 2 guys, got 5 guys. They rode from church to tavern, and more people showed up. And that's what we're trying to do at Hunter Nation. We're trying to build a grassroots army that can really make the difference in this country.
Well, you're definitely going to have to come back on again because the show, we're almost at our time here, our normal time. But holy cow, you dropped some bombs here throughout this show. You're 25 years knowing Ted Nugent. I would love to know that backstory. Shawn Michaels, how do we not even touch on that yet? So you're going to come back and explain how in the world that happened. That's awesome. Don Jr., I'd like to know a little bit more about that. There's so many things. I could talk for like another hour. How many? So you had mentioned that you've been on some radio shows and in Colorado. How many of these things are you doing right now? Because I know you host the Nightly Nuge with Ted Nugent. But do you do mostly hosting, or now is it as Hunter Nation you are more of a guest? And if so, how many shows are you doing?
All the above. We do 6 nightly Nuges a week. I still do a show that airs called Great American Tales. It's not a regular show. We do a kind of a one-off that we do. I hosted a live show down from Dallas that was on the Outdoor Channel, and right before the election in 2020, my guests were my good friend Jeff Foxworthy and Ted and Shemaine Nugent. Waddell was on there. Don Jr. was on there, and actually President Trump came on for a segment. So
I completely forgot to even write that one down because now we have Jeff Foxworthy and President Trump. Holy cow!
Yeah, Jeff helps us here with Hunter Nation as well. Jeff killed a monster moose with me up in the Yukon. I mean,
really?
So these are all good people, and you know what we all have in common is these core values. You thought I was going to say hunting, didn't you? It's these core values. It's the core values of God, family, and the traditional American values. Yeah, most of us also happen to hunt as well, and so we share that time together. But it's really these core American values, and I love the way Ted says this all the time on the Nightly Nuge. If you're not a hunter, it doesn't matter. HunterNation.org is the place where we're trying to circle all conservatives that support these values of God, family, country. And if you think about this, Ben, when we founded Hunter Nation and we start putting the tenets of what we stand for, if you go to our website, it's God first, family, country, and we're called Hunter Nation, but we don't even get to our hunting values into 4 deep on the depth chart. So that's exactly why Ted says if you're a conservative, you have these values, join us at HunterNation.org because we are that one organization that's not afraid if there's only 2 of us in the bar to fight 30.
What if you're not a conservative? Can they still become a member?
I would love to get these liberal anti-hunters to come and join Hunter Nation because, I'd love it to see a PETA-loving person wearing a Hunter Nation Wolf Warrior shirt or, I hunt, I vote. That'd be awesome. We'll take their money too, but I don't think they're going to be the ones spreading our message, man. I think it's going to be people like you and me that share core values. We may not hunt, although, you know what? Get me on your show a few times. I may get you out there.
I don't know. So when Ted was on last, Ted, here's me. He's like, Ted. Ted Nugent was on last Friday, but he was on about a year and a half before. And I had mentioned that I wasn't a hunter, and that was ended up being like 15-minute conversation. And I said, I can't get past the whole field dressing thing. And he went into the details about, and you've never experienced life until you pull out this and the blood's, and I'm like getting grossed out just listening to it. I'm like, stop talking. So I don't know. Someone else would have to do that.
Yeah, Ted is like the Howard Stern of this side, right? He's a shocker.
Yeah, he's
entertaining. This way, I actually have friends that don't hunt, but we do share these other values.
Yeah.
But yeah, I tell you what, doing the show with Ted, if you don't listen to the Nightly Nuge, you're really missing out because these current events, whether it's Hunter Biden, whether it's the Ukraine or the J6 issues, man, you want the straight talk. Ted Nugent brings it every single night. And honestly, this is how it's produced. Ted comes into the studio. He doesn't know what the topics are. He doesn't want to know the topics.
Love it.
I throw a topic out and he goes. And so my goal has been for the last couple of months is once a week or once every other week to pull something out so obscure that there's no way that Ted can talk intelligently on it. I pulled out a robbery in New York City where the guy had gotten the store owner had shot a perpetrator and went to jail. And I brought that story out and Ted knew his name. I was like, okay, I can see that. Throw the towel. He knows it all.
Touche. Well, also, so I watched, I didn't know about that show until Ted was talking about it last Friday. So I've watched some and I just watched one, I think it was early this morning. And it was about the bald eagle. Right. It was something about that and Honduras and not being. So that was just, very entertaining and informative. And I think that's always a good show, right? If it's entertaining, but strong opinions and views, but also, factually done. But, you're giving a lot of credit to Ted, and I can certainly understand why. But don't sell yourself short, man. I've watched it now since I was aware of it. You do a great job hosting that. And you really do kind of tee that up because a lot of times hosts want to be the stars. And you allow Ted to be the star. Now, first of all, I think anything he ever does, he's going to be the star because that's just the way that he is. But you do a great job hosting it, man. And from a host to another host, because I'm not very good at this. I just kind of wing everything. But no kidding, you do a great job. You really do.
I appreciate that. It's like I feel a lot like Tiger Woods' caddy. I just
that's a great analogy.
You know what I'm saying? I just give him the club and he hits it. I did that for 7 years with Sean. We did McMillan River Adventures. I just gave Sean the club and he hit it. And I've been so lucky in my life, Ben, is that the guys that I've actually been able to hand the clubs to, like the Shawn Michaels and the Ted Nugents of the world, hit them perfect. And so, that makes the club hander.
Yeah, I mean, you can throw out softball pitches, but if they can't knock it out of the park, it's, well.
I've been very blessed in that way. I mean,
Nice.
I picked the right girl 37 years ago, and I've been handing her clubs ever since. It's just I've been very fortunate like that, and so I just really hope your listeners out there realize. And we joked around a little bit, we provided some information, Ben, but I hope they go to huntthevote.org and find out where, how, and the whole 9 yards to get out and vote in Wisconsin, April 4. Vote today. Vote. I mean, early voting is open now. You can register right up to the minute you pull the lever. And go to hunternation.org and join us. Be part of something bigger than yourself. Be part of something that's going to change America back to the America that we want it to be. I had this phrase on my mind. I just didn't know what. Something like, we need to make America great again. I don't know. It resonates with me. I just had that idea, Ben. Let's make America great again.
Keith, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much. Yeah, you're definitely having to come back on because I have so many things I still want to ask you and talk to you about. So yeah, we'll schedule another time for you to come back on. Keith, thanks so much.
Yeah, pleasure be mine. Thanks for having me, Ben. Have a great weekend and keep doing the great work you're doing up there, man, because it's really awesome.
Thank you. Special thank you to our guest, Hunter Nation founder and host of the Nightly Nuge with Ted Nugent, Keith Mark, for making himself available and jumping on for a chat with us today. I'll see you right back here on Tuesday when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for our weekly Positive Tuesday Ben and 50 show. Pretty sure we're going to be discussing swatting incidents that have been happening in our area school districts in the last couple of days in Wisconsin. So there's a lot to unpack with that. And next Thursday, March 30th, Senator Romaine Quinn will also be back for our monthly chat about all things going on in Madison and in the 25th Senate District. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching and have a blessed day.